Hello, everyone. My name is Dana. I am 39. I gave 11 years of my life to that company. 11 years of dedication, late nights, and missed personal milestones. I wasn't just an employee. I was the one who made things run smoothly, the one who cleaned up every mess, solved every crisis, and ensured that our biggest projects didn't just succeed, but shined. I wasn't bitter about working hard. I believed in the company, in what we were doing. But what I did resent was how my dedication was taken for granted. It started with small things. A raise that was barely enough to cover inflation. A half-hearted thank you after months of overtime. Empty promises about promotion opportunities that never materialized. Every time I pushed for something more, my boss, Greg, would sigh dramatically, act like I was asking for the world, and finally reluctantly agree to a minor salary adjustment. Dana, we really appreciate your efforts, but budgets are tight. I know you work hard, but you have to understand, we can't just give raises because someone asks. You're a valuable part of the team, but let's revisit this conversation in 6 months. 6 months would pass, then another, and another, and every time, the conversation was the same. I told myself I could live with it, that eventually they'd see my worth, that my hard work would be rewarded. Then came the moment that changed everything. I had spent months planning one of the biggest events our company had ever hosted. An international delegation was flying in, and everything had to be perfect. I worked late nights, managed last-minute changes, soothed over diplomatic egos, and ensured that when the doors opened, our firm would be seen as nothing less than exceptional. And it worked. The event was flawless. The delegates were beyond impressed. Clients raved about it. We secured multiple new contracts from that night alone. I thought, finally, I had done something so undeniably valuable that even Greg wouldn't be able to ignore it. Then payday came. No bonus. No extra acknowledgement. Just a generic email from Greg to the company, vaguely congratulating everyone for a successful event. No mention of my name. No mention of the months of work I had put in. I stormed into his office. "Greg, where is my bonus?" I asked, keeping my voice level even though I could feel the anger boiling beneath my skin. He looked up from his computer, acting surprised. "Oh, Dana, about that. We had to make some last-minute budget adjustments. Unfortunately, there wasn't room for individual bonuses this quarter." I stared at him. No room? No room, after I had just secured multiple long-term contracts for the company? "Greg, I ran that event. I made that event. You know that." He sighed, leaning back in his chair, looking at me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Dana, we all work hard. I can't just start handing out bonuses because someone thinks they deserve one." I could feel my hands shaking. I had given this company everything. Everything. And here he was, treating me like I was some greedy, entitled employee for wanting recognition for work that had directly benefited them. I took a deep breath. "Understood," I said, turning to leave. "Dana, don't be upset." I didn't even bother responding. I went straight to my desk, opened my laptop, and drafted my resignation letter. Greg had no idea that I already had an offer waiting. A competitor in the same city had been reaching out to me for months, offering me exactly what I deserved: a higher salary, a leadership position, a company that actually valued the work I put in. That evening, as I walked out of the office for the last time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: relief. What I didn't know then was that Greg had just made the biggest mistake of his career because he thought he could replace me. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. The day after I submitted my resignation, Greg didn't even bother calling me in for a conversation. No counteroffer, no attempt to make me stay. Just a perfunctory email acknowledging my 2-week notice, and a brief, "We wish you the best in your future endeavors." That was all I got. 11 years, and that was all I was worth to him. I shouldn't have been surprised, but it still stung. The moment my resignation became public knowledge, though, the office went into chaos. People stopped by my desk, whispering, wide-eyed. Some were shocked. Some were angry. Not at me, but at Greg. "Dana, you're really leaving? Did Greg even try to keep you? What the hell is he thinking?" I could see the panic growing in real time. People knew that I had handled more than half of the company's key accounts. I had built relationships, managed projects, and ensured clients stayed happy, all while Greg took the credit. And now, I was leaving with all that knowledge, all those relationships, and taking them somewhere else. The passive-aggressive jabs started almost immediately. Greg avoided me completely, but I overheard him in the break room one afternoon, talking just loud enough for me to hear. Some people just don't have company loyalty anymore. They get a little attention from the competition and jump ship the first chance they get. I wanted to laugh. Company loyalty. What loyalty had this company ever shown to me? The bare minimum raises, the constant excuses whenever I asked for what I had earned, the stolen credit for my work. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because word was spreading. By the end of my first week of notice, 3 clients had already reached out to me privately, saying they had heard I was leaving and wanted to know where I was going. They weren't happy. Greg had no idea how thin the ice was beneath him. The final week was worse. It was as if Greg thought punishing me would somehow make me regret my decision. Tasks were dumped on my desk at the last minute. Meetings were scheduled without informing me. Then I was called out for not being prepared. My workload magically doubled, despite the fact that I was leaving in a matter of days. It was petty, but I did my work without complaint, because I knew something Greg didn't. By this point, my new company had already finalized my contract. I had signed the paperwork. My salary was nearly double what I was making here. And best of all, I wouldn't be starting in a junior position. I would be walking in as a senior project manager. The moment I walked out of this building, I would never have to deal with Greg again. On my last day, he finally called me into his office. I expected some half-hearted attempt to smooth things over, maybe even a last-minute guilt trip about how I was betraying the team. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and gave me the fakest smile I had ever seen. "So, Donna," he said casually, "where are you headed?" I met his gaze evenly. "To a competitor." His smile didn't falter, but I saw the way his fingers tightened on the desk. "I see," he said. "Well, I just hope you know what you're doing. Jumping into a new environment can be difficult. Some people find out the hard way that they were only successful because of the system supporting them." I smiled. "I guess we'll see, won't we?" I stood up, extended my hand, and watched as he hesitated for just a second before shaking it. "Best of luck, Greg." Then I walked out of his office for the last time. It wasn't long before the cracks in the company began to show. The moment I stepped into my new office, I knew I had made the right decision. Everything about the atmosphere was different. Professional, efficient, and, most importantly, respectful. From day one, my new boss, Elliot, made it clear that I was here because of my skills, my experience, and my reputation. "We've been watching your work for a while, Dana," he told me during my onboarding meeting. "When we heard you were looking for a change, we didn't hesitate. People in this industry know how much of an impact you've made. That was the difference. Greg had spent years treating me like I was disposable. Elliot and his team made it clear I was an asset. I settled in quickly, and within a few weeks, I could feel myself growing in ways I never had before. I had real authority over projects. My ideas weren't just heard, they were implemented. My salary was what I was worth, not just what someone could get away with paying me. And then, the real fun began. Because word had gotten out. I hadn't been at my new company for even a full month before former clients started calling me directly. "Dana, we heard you moved. Are you still handling corporate event planning? We loved working with you, and honestly, things have been chaotic since you left. Are you open to discussing a contract with us? We're looking to expand our business, and we trust you. Can we set up a meeting?" At first, I played it professionally. I didn't poach clients. I didn't need to, because the moment they found out I was somewhere new, they came to me. One by one, clients that had worked with my old firm for years started pulling out of their contracts. Some did it quietly, transitioning their accounts over to us with little fanfare. Others were more direct, sending emails that made their reasons clear. And all of them had one thing in common. We worked with Dana for years. She was the reason we stayed. Now that she's gone, we see no reason to continue our partnership. It wasn't long before I started hearing rumors. My old company was struggling. Greg was panicking. He had never really understood how much of the company's success had been built on my relationships, my expertise, my ability to manage complex projects. And now that I was gone, so were the clients. About 3 months after I left, I ran into a former coworker at a networking event. She pulled me aside, eyes wide. "Dana, it's insane over there. Greg is losing his mind. Clients are dropping left and right, and senior management is scrambling to figure out why. They tried to hire 2 people to replace you, and it's still not enough." I raised an eyebrow. "They hired 2 people?" She nodded. "And it's not working. The clients don't trust them the way they trusted you. Everyone sees the company is in freefall, and honestly, most of us are looking for a way out before it gets worse." I wasn't surprised. Greg had always assumed people were interchangeable. He thought that just because he had the title of boss, he could replace real talent with anyone. But he was wrong, and he was about to pay for it. A few months later, The collapse of my old company was no longer just an internal rumor. It was public knowledge. The first major blow came when one of their biggest clients pulled out entirely. This wasn't just any client. This was a long-term, multi-million-dollar contract that had kept the company financially stable for years. The moment they walked away, it set off a chain reaction. Other clients, already uneasy with the changes, started following suit. By this point, Greg was in full damage control mode. I heard from my old colleagues that his once smug demeanor had completely disappeared. He was calling emergency meetings every other day, trying to figure out how to stop the bleeding. But the truth was, there was nothing he could do. Clients weren't just leaving because of mismanagement. They were leaving because they didn't trust him. For years, he had taken credit for my work, dismissed my concerns, and refused to recognize my value. And now, without me to hold things together, his entire operation was crumbling. I never reached out. I didn't need to. Everything Greg had built was falling apart under its own weight. And then, the final blow came. One morning, I walked into my office and saw a message from a former coworker sitting in my inbox. Subject: guess who just got fired? I didn't even have to open the email to know. Greg had been removed as CEO. It turns out that when the company's financial losses became impossible to ignore, the board had no choice but to push him out. He had tried blaming everyone but himself, claiming that the competition, meaning me, had been unfairly targeting their clients. But there was no scandal, no underhanded tactics, just the consequences of his own arrogance. The irony? His replacement was someone he had previously overlooked for a promotion, one of the few people in the company who had actually respected me. A few weeks later, I found out where Greg had landed. Gone was the CEO title, the corner office, the power. Instead, he had been forced to take a lower-paying job in a different city. No leadership position, no prestige. Just a mediocre job at a company that would never take him as seriously as he once took himself. And me? I was thriving. At my new company, I was not only excelling, but climbing the ranks faster than I had ever imagined. Within a year, I had been promoted to Director of Client Relations, overseeing a team of professionals who actually valued my leadership. I was finally being paid what I was worth, respected for my work, and surrounded by people who didn't just see me as replaceable. One day, while reviewing some new client contracts, I came across the name of a company that had once been one of Greg's biggest accounts. They were now our clients. I smiled, signed the final approval on the contract, and closed the file. Greg had once told me that some people only succeeded because of the system supporting them. Funny how, in the end, he was talking about himself. A full year had passed since I left my old company, and my life had never been better. At my new firm, I wasn't just another employee grinding away in the background. I was recognized, respected, and rewarded for my expertise. Clients trusted me. My team valued my leadership. And for the first time in over a decade, I felt like I was in complete control of my career. Then one afternoon, an unexpected name popped up in my inbox. It was from Greg. I stared at the screen, my curiosity battling my instinct to delete the email without reading it. In the subject line, all it said was, "Can we talk?" I clicked. "Dana, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out and see if we could have a conversation. I know things between us ended on bad terms, but I'd really appreciate the chance to talk. Let me know if you're open to it." I almost laughed. Greg, the same Greg who had dismissed my hard work, denied me promotions, and stolen my credit, wanted to talk? I knew exactly why he was reaching out. He had lost everything. His cushy CEO position, gone. His influence in the industry, non-existent. His former employees, all working elsewhere, thriving without him. I had nothing to say to him. I closed the email without responding. A week later, another email arrived. "Dana, I understand if you don't want to talk. I just wanted to say, I realize now that I didn't appreciate you the way I should have. You were right about everything. I let my ego get in the way, and I see now that I made a huge mistake. I lost a great employee, and I lost the trust of a lot of people. I just wanted you to know that I regret how things ended." I sat back in my chair, rereading the message. Greg wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't even offering an apology. He was just another man realizing too late that he wasn't as irreplaceable as he thought. And honestly, I didn't need an apology, because he had already been punished in the best way possible. By the time he realized what he had lost, it was too late to fix it. I never replied. I didn't need to. I had already won. Looking back, I realize now that leaving Greg's company was the best decision I ever made. At the time, it had felt like stepping into the unknown, a terrifying leap after 11 years of dedication to a place that never truly valued me. But standing where I am today, I see it for what it was. The moment I took control of my life. At my new firm, my career took off faster than I had ever imagined. In less than 2 years, I had not one, but 2 major promotions. Clients sought me out by name. I wasn't just managing projects, I was shaping the company's future. And the best part? My success wasn't just professional, because for the first time in years, I had something Greg's company had stolen from me. Balance. I wasn't drowning in work at all hours. I wasn't sacrificing my personal life for a paycheck that barely kept up with inflation. I was finally earning what I was worth, and I could actually enjoy it. My husband, Mark, had been my rock through everything. He had seen how exhausted I was after working for Greg, how frustrated I had been every time I was passed over, how much it had hurt me to be undervalued. And now, he saw a completely different version of me, a happier, more confident, more fulfilled version. And with the financial freedom that came with my new job, we were able to start building the life we had always wanted. A year ago, we bought our dream home, a stunning, modern house with high ceilings, a spacious backyard, and a view that stretched for miles. I still remember the feeling of walking through it for the first time, knowing that every bit of hard work, every long night, every moment of frustration had led to this. Mark and I would stand on our back patio in the evenings, watching the sunset, feeling the kind of peace we had never known before. We traded in our old, reliable but boring sedan for a luxury SUV, One that actually made road trips enjoyable instead of a cramped endurance test. We took vacations without stress, booked flights without hesitation, and finally had the freedom to enjoy life instead of just working to survive. It was everything I had worked for, everything Greg had tried to convince me I wasn't worth. And the irony? While I was thriving, Greg was barely scraping by. The last I heard, he had moved out of state for a lower-level job, far from the industry connections he once bragged about. He had no influence, no power, no team of talented employees to make him look good. He had been reduced to exactly what he had always feared: irrelevance. And me? I had become everything he once told me I couldn't be. Successful, respected, free. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't change a thing. Because Greg's greatest mistake was thinking he could replace me, and my greatest victory was proving him wrong. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's this: never let a company convince you that you owe them your loyalty when they refuse to give you respect. For years, I believed that if I just worked harder, if I just proved myself enough eventually, I'd be rewarded. I was wrong. The truth is, some companies will never appreciate you the way you deserve. Some bosses will always take your dedication for granted, and if you're not careful, you'll wake up 5, 10, 15 years later, realizing you wasted your best years building something that never valued you. If you're in a job where you're constantly undervalued, underpaid, and ignored, leave. I know it's scary. I know it feels like a risk. But I promise you, the biggest risk isn't leaving. The biggest risk is staying somewhere that refuses to see your worth. Your skills, your time, your effort, they are valuable. And there is always, always a place out there that will appreciate them. When I left Greg's company, I was terrified. I worried I was making a mistake. But looking back, the only mistake I made was not leaving sooner. So, if you're sitting there reading this, feeling that knot in your stomach because you know your company doesn't value you, listen to that feeling. Trust yourself. Because when you finally stand up and walk away, when you refuse to let them take you for granted any longer, when you step into a place that actually respects you, you'll wonder why you ever wasted another second waiting for things to change.